On the morning of November 19, 2004, Cameron Doomadgee, a 36-year-old Aboriginal resident of Palm Island, set out on a simple mission. He had caught a few mud crabs and was on his way to the local market to sell them, hoping to make a little money for his family. Before heading off, he made a brief stop at his sister's home to visit his baby niece. He smiled at the little girl, sang to her softly, and then continued on his way. As he walked through the streets of Palm Island, Mulrunji, as he was also known, was in good spirits. He hummed a song as he walked. His voice carried over the tropical air, a carefree tune in a place where carefree moments were rare. However, fate had something else in store that day. While walking, he came across Senior Sergeant Chris Hurley, who was in the middle of dealing with a disturbance in the community. Mulrunji, emboldened by his good mood, made some remarks as he passed by. Hurley, a white police officer with a history of aggressive policing in Aboriginal communities, did not take kindly to the comments. Without hesitation, he arrested Mulrunji. Palm Island had long been a place of tension between its Aboriginal residents and law enforcement. For decades, the community had endured racial discrimination, police brutality, and systemic oppression. Mulrunji's arrest was just another chapter in that grim history, but what happened next would ignite a firestorm. Less than an hour after his arrest, Cameron Doomadgee was dead in his cell. In the adjacent cell, a fellow Aboriginal man named Patrick Bramwell heard the commotion. He later described sounds of struggle, the echoes of violence in a confined space. And then, silence. When officers finally checked on Mulrunji, he was lifeless. His body bore massive internal injuries, a split liver, a ruptured spleen, and broken ribs. Injuries too severe to be self-inflicted. Word of his death spread like wildfire through Palm Island. The people were devastated. Another black death in custody. Another life stolen. The outrage grew until, on November 26, it erupted into a full-scale riot. The people of Palm Island had had enough. Generations of suffering, of watching their brothers and sisters brutalized by a system meant to protect, boiled over. A furious crowd gathered, demanding justice. They stormed the police station, setting it ablaze. The courthouse followed, and then the home of Chris Hurley. Palm Island burned with the flames of rebellion. Law enforcement, overwhelmed, retreated. The officers, including Hurley, fled to the hospital, where they were later airlifted to safety. The government's response was swift and brutal. The aftermath saw a heavy-handed police crackdown. Dozens of officers were flown into Palm Island, arriving in riot gear, their faces hidden behind balaclavas, their weapons loaded. They conducted early morning raids, kicking down doors. Children awoke to the sight of guns pointed at their heads. Families were tasered. Terror reigned over Palm Island. The raids were later deemed racist, and the government was forced to pay a record $30 million in a class action settlement. But no amount of money could erase the scars left on the community. As for justice, it never came. Chris Hurley walked free. Despite multiple autopsies confirming Mulrunji's catastrophic injuries. Despite years of inquiries and legal battles, Hurley was acquitted of manslaughter and assault charges. Instead, in a cruel twist, he received a confidential payout of $102,955 Australian dollars. Tragedy continued to haunt the case. On January 16, 2007, Patrick Bramwell, the man in the adjoining cell, the man who had heard Mulrunji's final moments, was found dead. Suicide, they said. Another mystery. Another loss. The pain did not stop there. In 2006, Mulrunji's son also took his own life, unable to cope with the loss of his father and the injustice that followed. While his family grieved, Hurley carried on with his life, protected by the very system that had enabled him. Hurley was transferred to the Gold Coast less than a month after Doomadgee's death, where he continued his law enforcement career. Over the years, he racked up a disturbing list of charges, including assault and dangerous driving. In 2010, he was forced to repay nearly $35,000 in insurance fraud allegations following the Palm Island riot. In 2013, he assaulted a motorist after mistakenly believing the man had insulted him, chasing him down in a fit of rage and grabbing him by the throat. In 2015, he was found guilty of dangerous driving after shots were allegedly fired during a high-speed pursuit. And in 2016, he was accused of assaulting a female colleague, dragging her at a shopping center while swearing at her over a private matter. Despite all this, he evaded true accountability. Hurley medically retired in 2017, escaping further scrutiny. Meanwhile, the Aboriginal people of Palm Island continued to suffer. They had lived on the land for tens of thousands of years before white colonizers arrived, yet they were still treated as outsiders in their own home. The case of Cameron Doomadgee was not an isolated incident, it was part of a long history of racial injustice. One that persists to this day. To this day, justice for Mulrunji remains elusive. His death was not just the loss of one man, but a symbol of the brutal reality faced by Aboriginal Australians. A reminder that in their own country, under the watchful eye of the law, their lives were still deemed less valuable. As the years pass, the name Cameron Doomadgee may fade from headlines, but his story will never be forgotten by those who continue to fight for justice. Because for Aboriginal Australians, the struggle is far from over.